Well, on behalf of Berean Christian Academy and its valued stakeholders, we warmly welcome you to a new podcast from the Berean Christian Academy podcast network, Anchored Solutions, grounded in truth, engaging complex decisions. My name is Matthew Atwell. I am one of several volunteer teachers here at Berean Christian Academy and a doctoral student at the University of Findlay's College of Education. I'm joined today by Berean Christian Academy's headmaster, Mr. Stephen Servius. Today's conversation focuses on Berean Christian Academy's admissions policy, specifically whether a hybrid model might better serve the school's mission than a strictly covenantal one. This is not a debate to win, but a discussion to clarify what is most faithful and effective. So, with that, is it okay if I call you Stephen?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Stephen, can you briefly explain the current covenantal admissions policy?
Right. So our current policy is we're looking for students, families that are like-minded to us. So here at Berean Christian Academy, we subscribe to the 1689 Second London Baptist Confession of Faith. And although parents don't have to fully ascribe on every single chapter that's in there, every single article, but in general, affirm this as their statement of faith in their own home. So with that is the idea that we're covenantal in the sense that we seek to only partner with parents that are like-minded, that have a biblical worldview, and whose doctrine, for the most part, would align with what we're teaching here. So what is being taught here is exactly what's being taught at home. The way that we uphold standards here at the school is exactly how it would be held up at home. So for the most part, we are looking for Christian families.
Very good. What theological and practical commitments shape that approach?
It really comes down to Deuteronomy chapter 6. So in there, we get the command by God for His followers to teach these commands to their children all throughout the day, right? When they're lying down, when they're rising up, when they're on the way, when they're walking, when they're talking, when they're working, when they're doing whatever, right? They are to be teaching these commands to their children. And the unfortunate truth is, we live in a time where it's very hard to spend the amount of time with your children like we used to be able to. And just the way that society has kind of moved in America, it's very hard just to get the mom to be able to spend a significant amount of time with the children. So with that, tragically, the question is, okay, so where do those children go? And unfortunately, what it's come down to is, okay, we will give our children over to the state. They will be tasked with training them up in worldview, in all of the subjects and all the disciplines, in morality and everything else. And we as parents will be the ones who provide for them, who will feed them, who will make sure they show up to school on time, and then become shocked when, as they grow and mature, all throughout those formative years that they've spent far away from us, they're nothing like we recall when they were with us more before they started going to school. Mm-hmm. So that Deuteronomy 6 passage, verse 7, of training your children up, we just want to partner and make it so that what they're being taught at home is what they're being taught here at the school. And we're just reclaiming those 8 or so hours that they would be spending out at home. Now, you tackle on extracurriculars, now you're looking at maybe 10 hours a day that they're out of the home. And then the question is, well, how many hours a week are they really spending with their families outside of summer breaks?
Right. How does the school define success in admissions?
How we define success in admissions, honestly, is it just comes down to, hey, are we serving the church well? Success in admissions would be, did we end up compromising and thinking to ourselves, well, we have to get a certain amount in so we can break even. And okay, well, let's go ahead and lower the standard a little bit. Let's go ahead and maybe perhaps make it a little bit easier academically, or let's just go ahead and kind of maybe not so much stick to the covenant model there for certain families because, hey, we just need those numbers. So I guess that's where it starts, is the idea of, are we compromising somewhere? But success really just comes down to the idea that we look at each and every one of these students that are in our school, and we can, with a clean conscience, say, hey, they are learning, they are growing, they're thriving, and their parents are being served in the amount of transparency and the lack of anxiety, in the sense of, is my child okay? Is my child really in trusted hands? And that peace of mind is there.
I understand. I can sympathize with everything you said. Well, let me give some definitions here to the covenantal model. We've spoken about that, as opposed to a missional model and a hybrid model. So a covenantal model, a covenant-based enrollment policy, requires that at least one parent of a prospective enrollee be a believer and assent to the school's doctrinal beliefs and practices. That's pretty much what you described.
Right.
And proponents of this approach understand their biblical calling in relation to Christian schooling as service to the church, to promote her well-being, and therefore conceive of the student body as comprising members of the covenant community of believers. And these definitions are drawn on authors Dan Behrens and Dan Meester, and I'll put those notes in the show notes, references rather. Now, a mission-focused policy, by contrast, allows the admission of enrollees from non-believing families. Pretty straightforward. This approach is often understood as a desire to achieve greater evangelistic impact in the community. And it's oftentimes, as you mentioned, in response to low enrollment numbers, so to maintain those numbers. A hybrid model is obviously going to be somewhere in between. A hybrid approach might include a proportion of non-believing families relative to believing families. Let's talk about some shared values. And what is the primary mission of, before you answer, actually, the primary mission of Berean Christian Academy? I've pulled the mission statement off of the website, or I'm not sure if that would be on the website. Yeah. So here it is. Berean Christian Academy partners with parents to provide students with an exceptional education through an integrated curriculum, teaching methods, and culture that are unapologetically Christian, providing a biblical worldview for all studies. With Christ at the center, the Academy seeks to pursue goodness, truth, and beauty in every area of life, recognizing these as elements of a divinely ordered whole. And this mission statement is your daily driver. Is there anything that you would elaborate on, or as far as that mission?
Yeah, I guess just to make it a little bit more succinct, just to sum it up, our mission here is to be a school that gives students the gospel on the back of a college preparatory education. We seek to be disciple-making disciples. I know that's a phrase that gets thrown out a lot, but that's what we hope to ring true, that we would make disciples, but also make disciples who seek to make other disciples. So the idea there is, yes, we want to give a robust education that is excellent, that teaches our students to pursue excellence in all ways of life, but also to, at the forefront of that, have Christ be at the center of everything and every subject that they're being taught. So those are the two driving forces. Is we want to uphold excellence in academics, but we also want to, most importantly, hold up our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Right. Excellent. What outcomes are we most committed to in students?
Really, their salvation. Their salvation. That is a daily prayer. Every night, before my wife and I go to sleep, we pray for the souls of our students, and we want to see these kids saved. And we want to see an impact upon this community through the students here and their parents. So it starts there. It starts with their salvation comes first, and then comes hey, we also want to have students who are great students, who are lifelong pursuers of wisdom, of knowledge, of truth, who are constantly seeking to learn, and not for the sake of knowing, but for the sake of one honoring God, but truly what drives them is understanding that God created all of this, and all truth belongs to God, and they seek to know Him better through all that He has created here. First and most importantly, they know Him through His scriptures, but through knowing this world, through knowing the stars, right? By knowing astronomy, they can know Him. By understanding the way that history works, they can understand humanity and understand biblical anthropology just through understanding history. Again, it's just in every subject, science especially, right? In science, seeing, wow, He is a great creator God. And there's so many stories I can share in all of the different subjects that my students are currently learning how they can come to know God better.
Amen. Well, I didn't add this, but I think you fairly well summed up your vision statement, which is your long-term goal there. So I appreciate that. Where do you see admissions policy directly supporting or protecting that mission?
Again, going back to that covenantal model, again, there is a worry that, hey, what could throw a huge wrench into these plans for the students that are here, for the souls that have been entrusted to us by the parents who will stand before God and give an account for how they raise their children. What we fear could be a huge wrench thrown into those plans would be for there to be a disruptive student who only causes terror and hardship for those students, who becomes a negative influence upon those kids. And that protection of, hey, we want to make sure every student here is upholding this idea of what it is that we're striving for, and parents to uphold that, right? We don't ever want to have a parent who will say things like, well, you don't need to know all that stuff, or to even use our own life as an example of like, you don't need to do all your work. I mean, I didn't do my homework and I turned out great, right? We don't want parents to contradict what they're being taught here and then seek to just live a life of mediocrity in the sense of their pursuits. And again, that's where we have to be very careful when we're admitting a student in. Hey, how is the home life? How are the parents? How do those parents even speak on academics, right? And again, we're not looking for our students to become astronauts and biochemical engineers and all those kind of things. Look, you can be in whatever trade, whatever you want to be in, and be one who seeks excellence in all things. And for the parents, we're just looking again for like-minded families who would not contradict what is being taught here. So, and yeah.
Well, again, I appreciate that. Clearly, we agree more than we disagree. Let's identify some tensions here.
Yep.
What challenges has the current admissions model created, if any?
Well, obviously, the struggle has been numbers, right? Because as I'm asking for these things and saying, hey, this is what we'd like to have in our school, obviously, what it sounds like I'm saying is, hey, like I'm looking for a unicorn. Okay, that's what I'm looking for, okay? We're looking for the kid with a great home life that, again, has good doctrine and theology being taught at home, and parents who are super excited to put them in a school where they will pursue the hardest possible path to graduating high school, when what's offered for free takes a whole lot less of work. In fact, maybe no work at all. Just show up half the time and you get passed on to next grade. So that's very difficult to sell someone on. Is, hey, it's going to cost you a little extra, and there's going to be some sacrifices, and there's going to be a lot longer hours going into this. But if you do this, you can come here. That is hard to sell for a lot of parents.
Yeah, indeed. Are there populations we are currently unable to reach?
Yes, I would say part of a couple of the populations I've been thinking through is obviously the homeschool families, right? Because there are a lot of families that do push their kids towards an excellent education, and we'd love them to be here. But some of them are being homeschooled because there is already this distrust in the public school system, and parents are in a position where they can or they have made those sacrifices and said, no, you're staying home with us. Mm-hmm. So there's a group there we're looking to reach and see, hey, would mom like to take a year off from this and let us partner with her and maybe even, hey, employ her here since she has years of experience in training up these children. Another group would be, again, like a family that says, hey, I want my child to get the best possible education. But unfortunately, just culturally, when we think of best possible education, we immediately look towards the already established institution, which would be the public schools, and say, no, those are the trained professionals who have been certified by the state. Right. And again, Vodi Bakum, has a funny quip on this. The idea is, man, we can all agree, hey, it seems as if the government is really dropped the ball, right? With all the initiatives between No Child Left Behind and the Common Core and all these ways in order to, hey, let's educate our kids. And I know we're hitting record lows when it comes to test scores and everything else. I think we just hit a record low, 30-year record low this year. But then we're also saying, but wait, there's a problem here. The only ones who can fix this is the state, right? So no, I don't want them in that private school. I don't want them in that chartered school because we only the best and that can possibly train my child. So we're stuck in that where again, we're not a public school, therefore the idea is you guys aren't the experts.
I see. Yeah, how do we think about sustainability, enrollment, finances, community impact?
Mm-hmm. Not to sound flippant about it, but it's all according to faith. Right, that's where it really comes down to. How can we ensure stability? We can't. It's not in our hands. It never was in our hands. I mean, there are some public school systems, again, state-run, government-run, that cannot, for the most part, guarantee stability, as we're seeing in some school districts, record low enrollment rates. We're seeing massive layoffs in some places. We know here at Berean Christian Academy, the only thing that's going to keep our doors open is going to be the Lord. And if this is truly His will for us to exist, then we're going to exist. How many students will come in depends. And again, I know even right now as we're working towards re-enrollment for the next school year, there may be some surprises. There may be some families that at the last minute decide, you know what, we don't want to be here. And there might be a couple families that come out of nowhere the day before our school opens and says, hey, we'd like to partner with you. I mean, that's what's already happened in the short amount of time we've existed. And again, it really just comes down to faith. Now, we can have good marketing campaigns and we can put out some pithy little ads out there. We can do a lot of those things. I know we can, and we're working on it. But I know ultimately it's in the hands of the Lord.
Well, we've identified some tensions here. I think we talked about exclusivity versus mission outreach. Cultural integrity versus evangelistic opportunity. Stability versus growth. Given those tensions, I'd like to explore a possible middle ground approach with you. We mentioned the hybrid model.
Right.
Under a hybrid model, who is admitted under covenant criteria? Under the covenant criteria, nothing would change. You would continue to admit students from believing families who are committed to raising their children in the fear and admonition of the Lord. Who is admitted under missional criteria? Under the missional criteria, you might admit students from families that do not necessarily adhere to Christian doctrine, but are nonetheless sympathetic to the faith and desire the secular benefits associated with a faith-based school. And with that, I think it's important to talk about some guardrails. So potential guardrails might include a limited number of slots available to non-believing families in proportion to the number of slots available to believing families. Prospective non-believing parents would be required to assent to having their children educated in accordance with the school's principles and beliefs and to agree not to work against the school's intent. Their children, of course, would be held to the same high behavioral and academic standards. This might be a little controversial, but you might impose a probationary period during which both parties agree to a no-fault separation if it becomes clear that a good fit is not met during that time. And you may also create a policy that forbids, which I think would be important, given some of the risks that you've identified, that forbids non-believing parents from serving on any school boards to protect against attempts to change the school's mission and subvert its efforts. Some of these ideas I've taken from Dan Behrens, who I mentioned that I'll put those in the show notes, but to just give him some credit there. At this point, I'd also like to speak to some of the theological, philosophical, and practical aspects of a hybrid approach that, should you find it appealing, you might use to defend the idea. You and I are familiar with the idea of the seeker-sensitive church, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, quoting from Behrens, he says, international Christian educator Harold Klassen suggests that we would be better served by having seeker-friendly schools than seeker-friendly churches, on the basis of Deuteronomy 31:12. Klassen says this: the seeker-friendly school's roots go back to the very beginning of God's organization of his people. Even in the Old Testament, Moses instructed that they, quote, assemble the people, men, women, and children, and the aliens living in your towns, so they can listen and learn to fear the Lord your God and follow carefully all the words of this law, end quote. That's Deuteronomy 31:12. Not only God's people, this is also Klassen speaking, not only God's people were to be included in godly instruction, but also those who chose to join them but hadn't become part of them, end quote. You hear echoes of Dr. Lane Rice here, another researcher. She wrote her dissertation on hospitality in the Christian school enrollment process. She argued on the basis of hospitality that there are good reasons for a more inclusive approach to enrollment grounded in theological, philosophical, and pragmatic considerations, including hospitality's consistency with God's character. In support of that idea, one might turn to passages such as Leviticus 19:33 through 34 and Deuteronomy 10:19. And going back to the idea of seeker-friendly schools, Dan Meester, a veteran Christian educator, put it well when he said, set apart? Yes. Isolated? No way. It seems to have a nice ring to it. I kind of like that. Now, philosophical reasoning might include the idea of hospitality, along with other reasons, such as allowing non-believing families who desire to enjoy the benefits of private Christian education for their children, and not denying them that opportunity when it is available. Ethically and biblically, thinking broadly of passages like James 2:15 through 16 and 1 John 3:17 through 18, which says, if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? And based on that, ethically, it seems ideal. Pragmatically, we have educational outcomes, community impact, financial sustainability. For instance, on financial sustainability, Swanner and colleagues, in their 2023 article, Innovative Structural and Financial Models in the U.S. Christian Education, noted that socioeconomic and disability-focused inclusion, and that would include non-believing families, were associated with an optimistic perception of school sustainability. Also, a school's openness to change, driven by its mission, was also found to be an important sustainability factor. So, in light of some of these ideas, what concerns would you have with a model like this?
My main concerns just come down to the protection of the students that we have currently enrolled, right? Because again, if our primary desire is to serve like-minded families, families who are seeking to honor Christ, then we want to make sure that there aren't negative influences that can jeopardize that. Kids that would have parents going, well, I knew I should have just homeschooled my kid, right? And that's not to say, hey, there's a ungodly amount of overprotectiveness with the child, because no, it's biblical to protect your children from unnecessary, awful influences, right? The wisest man to ever live. I mean, he's giving life advice as the wisest and richest man this world's ever seen. And what is the first chapter? What is the first piece of advice he gives to a child? Is it finances? Is it career path? No, it's be careful who you hang out with, because they will be a bad influence on you, right?
Right.
So we want to protect them, and we don't want to let in those who would cause harm, right? That's the fear, right? But you're right in the sense of we are called as Christians to be salt and light to this world, right? We're called to be witnesses, so we can't just close ourselves off to the world. That's a theological error that I know the Anabaptists got into, is this idea of, hey, we're just going to shut ourselves off from the world. We're not called to be monks. That just, again, separates fully. Paul says, hey, if you are to separate from the evil of this world, then you'd have to leave this planet, right? So there's that of we are called to be salt and light, but then there's also, again, that worry of, well, if we become super focused on missional, then what's going to happen is we're going to have worldviews come in and conversations that get overheard and things that trends that kind of catch on with Christian families, where kids are going home and saying, "Oh, mom, my best friend just told me this is this and this," or "Hey, can we watch this movie?" And now parents are going, "Where did this come from?" Right? So we want to protect that. And again, that is the tension that we're in: being witnesses, but then also protecting the kids.
Yeah, no, those are valid concerns and risks to the school, to the well-being of the school. And I mean, obviously, a lot of that rides on parents.
Right.
Yeah, you'd have to choose wisely. That would be a difficulty. I think the model would need to address that. And I think there's certain precautions that you can take. I mean, we mentioned probationary period.
Right. It's helpful.
That might be something to consider. I certainly wouldn't want to undermine the values of the school. But then again, I think I don't know, you might call it a trap that some parents fall into. Some Christian parents who send their kids to a Christian school, they think, well, their reasoning is, I'm going to send my kid to that school as salt and light. And then, to your point, they wind up being corrupted by others in the school.
Absolutely.
So, I think the same thing, the same trap, parents can potentially fall in the same trap here. Whereas, I'm going to train up my child here to send them out as salt and light in the world. But you can't, as you said, we can't leave the world, and you can only isolate them so much. But again, I mean, I get it; those are valid concerns. But children in the church and out of the church, we know, oftentimes they behave in similar ways, and so do we. But the only difference
they're still sinners.
Right. The only difference is that we admit that we're sinners and seek a savior. And it'd be good to open that up to others. Now, let's just talk about practical implementation.
Okay.
So, if you and the board were open to this, what would be some first steps?
I guess it would be, it'd start with just making sure that we have the proper documents in place, right? If we're gonna, some kind of behavioral contract, perhaps, right? Then we have to become very wise on expectations of the parents, right? Because again, like a phrase I like to remind my students of, heathen's gonna heave, right? we should not be surprised, right? I think, yeah, 1 Corinthians 5, I think, Paul makes the point clear of you shouldn't be shocked when the world is sinning, right?
Right.
Again, that's what he says. What business do you have judging the world when there are those within the church that needs to be judged? And it's the same idea as I shouldn't be shocked that this child doesn't love Jesus, and it's just his entire worldview is off, right? And I shouldn't be shocked to find that his parents probably are doing and believing in some weird things, and even their whole parenting style is off because, again, it's not through a biblical worldview. So having the proper realistic and not legalistic expectations of family and for those kids would be one. Having proper documentation of what exactly would a behavior contract or probationary period look like. A lot of that just takes time, prayer, wisdom on that. Because I'm open to this. It's just I have to work through this, and that's been the struggle is how do I ensure the safety of my students, which I know at the end of the day, it's in the hands of God, right? Because they could be sitting next to the worst student this world's ever seen and still not be influenced by them, right? We all have similar stories, perhaps, backgrounds where some of us had awful surroundings, and yet the Lord brought us to Him, and perhaps without us going through as many hurdles as we could have if we would have just jumped way off to the wayside. And that's what we know as common grace, right? So we have to be wise. And so where do I start? I mean, I guess it starts there. It starts with, okay, like we have to think through this. We have to pray through this. And from there, I don't know. I know it takes wisdom from others who probably have done this already.
I hear you saying that we need clarity in policy, and it just reminded me of, another researcher, Carol Carreau. She wrote an article titled "A Qualitative Study of Private Christian School Admission Policies Regarding Homosexuality and Transgenderism." In that study, she found that, results indicated that nearly 73% of Christian schools have no policy regarding or no policy guiding admission decisions related to LGBTQ identifying families and students. I found that rather alarming.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to at some point that out to you. But yeah, clarity is important. What would need to be studied or piloted, perhaps?
You see, again, it's like I don't know.
A lot of questions.
So many questions because I'm still working through this. I'm still figuring this out myself, and I would be a wicked liar to say, "Oh no, I got this figured out." I don't.
Sure.
So I guess it would just start with, hey, well, one, if there is a family who is saying, "Hey, we really do want to partner with you," and hey, like, no, we don't go to church. We've made a million, mistakes, right? We've done all these things wrong, but we really want our child to learn and grow in this environment, right? So I guess it'd start there of, hey, I have to look at a family that is truly seeking to be a part of our school and say, you know what, yes, we'll take a chance. We'll see how this works out. And maybe that family knows some other families and say, hey, this place has done wonders for my child, not just in the sense of behavior modification, but hey, that my child has a love for learning. And that might turn into, because again, the question is, do I expect them to go to church? Do I say, hey, you can only be a part of our school if you go to our church, right?
Right.
I'm not comfortable making those kind of, demands on them. But the hope is that they would want to maybe start coming and go, what is this all really about?
Yeah.
Right.
Especially if the other kids are talking about it and
exactly.
enjoy it. And
plus, I mean, their kid's going to get hit in the head every day with the gospel.
Right.
Let's be honest. So that's what the hope would be, that they'd want to come. And that's where I guess it starts. And we haven't really gotten there yet where, hey, there was one where, man, I don't know about this one, but we're going to go ahead and take a chance because there's at least enough to know, hey, this child is not going to burn school down. This child is not going to entice his friends to do some wicked things when they get home, or have them even questioning, like, Satan did in the garden, questioning the authority that they follow, right? Did your parents really say you couldn't do that, right? And I guess that's where it starts. So as we're looking into the new year, that's an approach that maybe, I have to take and say, all right. But the hope is that there would be a family like that, right? Please teach my child, right? Because let's be honest, most homes, it's okay. What's the easiest, fastest, quickest way to push this process along? That's how many of us are trained, unfortunately, in this country.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think you've hinted at this somewhat, but how could success be measured?
How could success be measured? I hate to sound stereotypical with test scores, this and that, but we have to just take a step back and maybe I'm alone on this idea, but test scores do count for something. And I think we've kind of gotten away from that and said, hey, you're more than a number, which is true, right? Which is true. But test scores do still count. The idea is this: if you are getting a consistent 0 or F or whatever it might be on every single test, every single quiz, then there's a highly likely, okay, let's just say highly likely chance you don't understand the material, right? Now that doesn't necessarily mean that the kid who gets an A on everything has truly mastered it. I get that, right? Because some are really good at just regurgitating in the short term. But part of that is the testing, right? And that's kind of where I'm starting, at least in year one, is we're going to go ahead and assess, okay, are they on grade level? And the vast majority of our students were not on grade level when they got here, right? Because that wasn't expected of them. But now I want to see, after a year of being here, have they gotten closer to grade level, or are they now on grade level? So that would be at least the student academic success would be, have we seen significant improvement more than what we've seen in the public school where, hey, she went up 3 points on the standardized tests from the beginning to the end of the year. Now she's still way below grade level, but hey, she improved, so we're gonna pass her on to the next grade, right? We've seen a lot of that of, hey, we're gonna move her on to 4th grade, although she's still at a kindergarten reading level, but hey, she's in a 2nd semester kindergarten reading level, but she started the year in like the 2nd quarter of the 1st semester. Okay, so wow, look at that improvement. So that is the issue, and we're hoping, okay, maybe some standardized testing will be helpful. Okay, that's one of them. There are many others, but I think it does start there. We have to just see, okay, are they starting to improve now that we've untaught everything that they've been taught throughout the public school era, and now they're seeing, hey, you are actually more capable than you think, right? Now that we're not giving you low expectations.
All right, I'm going to make some. Let's just reflect on where we've been here, and we'll draw this to a close.
Yeah.
We both agree that staying true to our primary calling, which is to the church, is essential.
Right.
However, when opportunities arise, we should love our neighbor and not turn them away when they seek our help.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, a more inclusive admissions policy, like the hybrid approach I mentioned, could be seen as an act of faithfulness and a chance to demonstrate love to our neighbors in the community.
Right.
With that, I want to reaffirm my respect for you and for the board, and in no way would this change our relationship regardless of the outcome of our discussion today. I just ask that you thoughtfully consider what we've discussed. Do you have any final thoughts before we end this?
Absolutely. It ain't easy. It's not. I mean, it just isn't. There's always a new theory on how we can educate the kids. There's always a new way of, hey, maybe we should try this. There's always a new disorder that's being put out there. There's always these new metrics and new systems put in place. And every year we look at each other and go, okay, like, what now? What do we do now? Because clearly this didn't work. What now? What we're seeking to do here is we're seeking to go back to the old ways and say, hey, this seemed to have worked. Let's go back to it. The only thing that changed was our expectations for people and what they are capable of. That's all that's changed. So I just ask, hey, pray for the school, pray for Berean
Mhm.
Christian Academy, pray for our teachers that they would continue to work diligently as unto the Lord, and that our students would follow suit. So ask for your prayers.
Well, you got mine. I appreciate that. And one thing I learned today is that there's more questions than answers. So
Absolutely.
there's more discussion to be had.
Mm-hmm.
But my hope is that this conversation helps the board consider. I hope that they would listen to this because I imagine they would be the ones ultimately to approve or disapprove of policy change. But my hope is that this conversation helps the board consider whether a hybrid admissions model could preserve Berean's theological integrity while expanding its redemptive reach. Thoughtful change when grounded admission can be an act of faithfulness. Thank you for listening to today's inaugural Anchored Solutions podcast, a podcast of the Berean Academy Podcast Network. Stay grounded.